Beneath the familiar continents lies a forgotten map of the world. Ancient stories whisper of lands now lost beneath the ocean, vast bridges that once connected distant cultures. This journey pieces together geological clues and submerged ruins to reveal a past far more interconnected than history books dare to tell. By the end, you will see the ghostly outlines of entire sunken worlds that reshaped human destiny. We will explore why cultures across the globe share eerily similar flood myths, and what mysterious structures like the Yonaguni monument could mean for our understanding of civilization's true origins. What forgotten story does the ocean floor hold about our own beginnings more than 2,000 years ago? The philosopher Plato shared a story that would echo through the ages. He described a powerful island nation, Atlantis, existing beyond the Pillars of Hercules. This was no ordinary place, but a sophisticated empire with grand architecture and technology that seemed to defy its era. Its heart was a series of concentric circular canals, a marvel of engineering protecting a central citadel. Then, in one terrible day and night of fire and quakes, the entire island was swallowed by the sea, vanishing forever. Plato's account was presented as a true history, a cautionary tale of a civilization that fell from grace. This single story has sparked an endless quest, with proposed locations stretching from the island of Santorini in the Mediterranean to the depths of the Caribbean Sea. The core elements of its description, those circular cities and sudden, catastrophic loss, have made Atlantis the ultimate archetype for a sunken world. It is the ghost that haunts our maps. The original lost continent that first suggested our planet's geography was once dramatically different. This foundational myth does more than just tell of one fallen kingdom. It introduces the powerful idea that entire chapters of human history may be missing, submerged, and waiting to be rediscovered. If such a place could be lost, what other forgotten realms, what other bridges between ancient peoples might still lie hidden beneath the waves? While Atlantis captured the imagination of the West, a very different legend emerged from the vastness of the Pacific. This was the story of Mu, a sunken paradise said to have been the cradle of all human civilization. The name was popularized by a traveler named Augustus Le Plongeon, who claimed to have translated ancient Mayan texts describing this primordial homeland. But the scientific roots of this idea are even more fascinating. Decades earlier, biologists had proposed a hypothetical land bridge they named Lemuria. Their goal was to solve a simple puzzle. Why were the fossils of small, primitive lemurs found in both India and Madagascar, but nowhere in between? A sunken continent connecting the two seemed like the most logical answer. This sober geological theory was then transformed, woven together with spiritual beliefs and a longing for a golden age into the mystical, human-inhabited continent of Mu. This lost world was described as a tropical utopia, a place of advanced wisdom and towering cities that supposedly met a catastrophic end, much like its Atlantic counterpart. When we look across the scattered islands of the Pacific, from Hawaii to Easter Island, we find cultural threads that are strangely similar. Shared words for fundamental concepts, strikingly analogous creation stories, and legends of a great ancestral homeland that was lost to the sea. For those who believe in Mu, these are not coincidences. They are the cultural fingerprints of a common origin, the echoes of a mother culture whose children were scattered by a rising ocean. This Pacific enigma fundamentally challenges the Atlantic-centric view of lost worlds. It expands our search from a single ocean to a global scale, suggesting that the bridges between ancient peoples were not isolated. They may have formed a worldwide network, a forgotten map of connections now lying silent on the ocean floor. The legends of sunken continents find their most compelling support not in ancient texts, but in the hard, physical data of the Earth itself. To understand the world our ancestors walked, we must first look to the ice. During the last great ice age, colossal glaciers locked away massive volumes of the planet's water. This process dropped global sea levels by an astonishing 400 feet or more, radically redrawing the world's coastlines. What are now the shallow seas bordering our continents were once vast, exposed plains, teeming with life and ripe for human exploration. These were not mythical continents like Atlantis, but very real, very extensive land bridges known as continental shelves. Scientific surveys using advanced sonar mapping have painted a stunningly detailed picture of these lost landscapes. The scans reveal the ghostly imprints of ancient river systems, winding their way across what is now the dark ocean floor. They show the clear contours of forgotten coastlines, beaches that have not felt the sun for over 12,000 years. And in some remarkable cases, core samples drilled from the seabed have brought up tangible proof, like the preserved roots and peat of submerged forests, a silent testament to a world that was once alive and green. One of the most significant of these sunken realms was Sunderland, a sprawling extension of Southeast Asia that connected islands like Java, Sumatra, and Borneo to the Asian mainland. This was not a small land bridge, but a subcontinent in its own right, an area of immense ecological diversity that could have supported large, migrating populations. On the other side of the world, in the cold waters of the North Sea, lies the evidence for Doggerland, a fertile plain that once connected Great Britain to the European continent. Fishermen in that region have for centuries dragged up not just fish, but the bones of mammoths, ancient tools, and even spear points, all recovered from the sea bottom. These are not the artifacts of a shipwreck, but the everyday remains of a terrestrial society that hunted and lived on land that is now dozens of meters underwater. This geological foundation transforms the quest for lost continents from pure speculation into a tangible investigation. The Earth itself confirms that enormous, habitable territories were indeed swallowed by the rising tides at the end of the Ice Age. The stage was physically set for ancient civilizations to interact across distances we once thought impassable. So if the land was there, what traces did the people who lived on it leave behind? What sunken ruins might confirm that these were not just empty landscapes, but the very bridges that connected our ancient world? The idea that ancient humans were timid coastal dwellers is a myth shattered by the evidence of their incredible voyages. Long before the age of European exploration, entire cultures were masters of the sea. The Polynesians stand as a monumental example, embarking on deliberate journeys across thousands of miles of open Pacific in double-hulled canoes. They navigated not by compass or map, but by reading a living library of natural signs. They memorized the precise paths of stars, felt the subtle shifts in ocean swells, watched the flight patterns of birds, and could even detect the scent of distant islands carried on the wind. This was not accidental drift, but a sophisticated science of wayfinding that allowed them to discover and settle remote islands from Hawaii to New Zealand to Easter Island. Their achievements prove that the ocean was not an impenetrable barrier, but a highway. This maritime prowess forces us to reconsider the possibilities for even earlier civilizations. If people could cross such vast distances with Stone Age technology, what might have been possible for cultures whose tools and knowledge are now lost to us? The potential for contact across oceans is further hinted at by the silent testimony of the natural world. botanists have long been puzzled by the presence of identical plant species on opposite sides of the Pacific, such as the sweet potato. This tuber, native to South America, was found growing across Polynesia well before European contact. How did it get there? The most logical explanation points to human hands, to ancient voyagers who carried these vital crops with them, either directly across the ocean or perhaps via now submerged land masses that once made the journey shorter. When we combine this evidence of profound seafaring skill with the geological reality of exposed continental shelves, a new picture emerges. The lost continents and land bridges we have discussed may not have been isolated refuges, but the very stepping stones that enabled a global network of exchange. They could have provided resting points, resource hubs, and cultural way stations for these intrepid ancient mariners. The means for transoceanic travel clearly existed, making the idea of interconnected prehistoric worlds not just a fascinating legend, but a plausible chapter in our deep history. Off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island, the ocean floor holds a secret that challenges everything we think we know. Lying deep below the waves is a massive, monolithic structure, a series of immense stone terraces that rise like a stepped pyramid from the seabed. Its surfaces are dominated by stark, 90-degree angles and long, perfectly straight edges. There are features that look unmistakably like wide staircases, what appear to be carved pillars, and even a triangular entranceway. Discovered by a diver in the 1980s, the Yonaguni monument instantly ignited a firestorm of debate. Is this the ruined plaza of a prehistoric civilization, a complex built thousands of years ago when sea levels were lower, or is it simply one of nature's most incredible tricks? Geologists point to the rock itself, a form of sandstone that naturally fractures along straight planes and right angles due to tectonic stresses in the region. They argue that the powerful currents and relentless erosion of the sea could have sculpted these seemingly perfect shapes entirely by chance, creating a breathtaking but completely natural formation. On the other side, some archaeologists and researchers see a design that feels intentionally planned. They highlight symmetrical archways, what look like carved animal reliefs, and quarry marks that suggest human tool work. The most compelling argument is the presence of two round holes drilled close together at the top of the formation, a feature that seems incredibly difficult to explain through natural processes alone. This single site, more than any other, captures the core dilemma of searching for lost civilizations underwater. The evidence is often ambiguous, lying in a hazy zone between the undeniable power of geology and the tantalizing possibility of human artistry. Every straight line could be a tool mark or a stress fracture. Every terrace could be a ceremonial platform or a collapsed bedding plane. Yonaguni stands as a powerful symbol of this entire quest, a ghostly silhouette on the ocean floor that asks us a profound question. How do we distinguish a masterpiece from a miracle of nature when the original architects, whoever or whatever they were, have long since vanished? Far from the mysterious formations of Yonaguni, a discovery in the coastal waters of India offers a different kind of clue, one that is deeply interwoven with a living spiritual tradition. Here in the Arabian Sea lies the legendary city of Dwarka. Ancient Sanskrit texts describe it in vivid detail as a magnificent city of gold and silver, built by the deity Krishna himself, a place of immense splendor and power. The stories tell of its fate that after Krishna's departure from the world, the great city was consumed by the sea, vanishing beneath the waves. For centuries, this was considered a beautiful allegory, a poetic metaphor for the end of a divine era. Then, underwater archaeologists began to search. What they found has challenged that assumption. Submerged just off the modern coast of Dwarka, scattered across the seabed, are the remains of a vast settlement. There are massive stone block walls and fortifications that appear to align with the ancient descriptions of the city's layout. They have recovered stone anchors, suggesting a bustling port and a wealth of artifacts, including pottery, that have been dated back thousands of years. The timeline is especially compelling. The structures and materials pulled from the seafloor date to a period that closely matches the traditional era associated with Lord Krishna's life, around 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. This is not a vague, shapeless ruin, but a tangible, organized complex whose scale and sophistication speak of a significant and advanced maritime culture. The discovery of Dwarka does something extraordinary. It builds a direct bridge from myth to material reality. It suggests that the story of a city lost to the ocean is not merely a legend, but maybe a cultural memory of a real, catastrophic event, perhaps a rapid rise in sea levels or a massive seismic shift that submerged a coastal metropolis. This site provides powerful evidence that the lost lands of ancient lore were not always entire continents, but could also have been sophisticated coastal cities and trading hubs, places that served as critical connection points in a wider network. Dwarka stands as a profound example of how a story, passed down through generations, can hold within it a kernel of geological and historical truth, a memory of a time when the map looked different and the sea held less of the world. But the search for sunken structures is not confined to the distant waters of the Pacific. Closer to the Americas, in the clear, shallow seas of the Bahamas, lies a discovery that seems almost too perfect. Known as the Bimini Road, this is a remarkable line of massive, rectangular stone blocks resting on the seafloor. Viewed from above, the formation looks exactly like an ancient, cobbled roadway or the foundation of a massive wall, stretching for nearly half a mile into the blue haze. Its discovery in the 1960s sent a shockwave of excitement through the world of alternative history. Here, at last, was tangible, physical proof, a man-made path lying on the ocean floor, seemingly pointing the way to the lost continent of Atlantis itself. The stones are fitted together with such apparent precision, their edges so straight and their alignment so consistent, that it is easy to see why many believed they had finally found a piece of a sunken world. This was not a vague legend or a disputed text. This was something you could swim alongside and touch, a physical structure that whispered of a grander past. The allure was immediate and powerful, offering a simple, direct answer to a centuries-old mystery. Yet science soon offered a different, more prosaic explanation. Geologists identify the material as beak rock, a type of sandstone that forms naturally along coastlines when sand and shell fragments become cemented together by calcium carbonate, essentially the same process that creates concrete. As the sea level rose at the end of the last ice age, large sheets of this beak rock would have submerged. Over time, the relentless action of currents and tides could have cracked the rock along its natural horizontal bedding planes, breaking it into these remarkably uniform, block-like segments. The very perfection of the Bimini Road, they argue, is a testament to the powerful and consistent forces of nature, not the hand of a human architect. This site perfectly captures the tension at the heart of this entire quest. Our deep desire to find concrete evidence of lost worlds can sometimes lead us to see design where nature has simply followed its own elegant mathematical rules. The Bimini Road is a Rorschach test on the ocean floor, a formation whose true story depends entirely on who is looking at it. For some, it is an undeniable artifact. For others, it is a textbook example of pseudoscience where hope overrides rigorous analysis. This ongoing debate serves as a crucial lesson, reminding us that the most compelling clues are often those that force us to question not just the evidence, but our own interpretations. These stories of sunken worlds are not confined to isolated legends. They ripple through the foundational myths of nearly every ancient culture on Earth. From the highlands of Mesopotamia to the rainforests of Central America, a strikingly similar narrative emerges, the story of a great, world-consuming flood. In the ancient epic of Gilgamesh, the hero Utnapishtim is commanded by a god to build a giant boat to save his family and the seeds of all living things from a deluge sent to punish humanity. The parallels to the biblical story of Noah are unmistakable: a righteous man, a divine warning, an ark, and a flood that covers the highest mountains. Far across the Atlantic, the Mayan Popol Vuh tells of a great flood sent by the gods to destroy an earlier, failed race of humans. In ancient Greece, Deucalion and his wife Pyrrha, her survivor Zeus, sent flood to repopulate the world. Hindu texts describe Manu, who is saved from a catastrophic deluge by a giant fish. These are not just vague tales of bad weather. They describe a cataclysm of such immense scale that it resets the world, wiping the slate almost clean and leaving only a handful of survivors to carry on. The sheer consistency is staggering. How could cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia with no apparent contact all tell the same core story? The most compelling theory points not to shared fiction but to a shared traumatic memory. The end of the last ice age was not a gentle transition. As the planet warmed, the massive ice sheets melted, releasing torrents of fresh water into the oceans. But the process was not always gradual. Scientific evidence suggests there were periods of rapid, violent sea level rise, events geologists call meltwater pulses. One such pulse around 14,000 years ago may have caused the oceans to rise by several dozen feet in just a few centuries. For the people living along the coastlines and on the vast, exposed continental shelves, this would not have been a slow creep. It would have been a relentless, unstoppable invasion. The world they knew, the hunting grounds, the villages, the entire landscape, would have disappeared beneath the waves within a few generations. What would that have looked like to a Stone Age society? The rising waters would have forced constant retreat, swallowing ancestral lands and sacred sites. The event would have been apocalyptic, a trauma so profound it became etched into the collective human psyche. These global flood myths, then, may be the fragmented, poetic retellings of a real geological event that shaped human destiny. They are the echoes of a lost world, passed down across hundreds of generations, preserving the memory of the day the maps changed forever. If these stories hold a kernel of truth about drowned lands, what other ancient wisdom might be encoded in myth and legend, waiting for us to learn how to listen? This geological amnesia leads us to a truly mind-bending scientific question. What if an entire industrial civilization rose and fell on Earth long before humans ever existed? This is the core of the Silurian Hypothesis, a provocative thought experiment proposed by astrophysicist Adam Frank and geologist Gavin Schmidt. They ask a simple but profound question: how would we know if a technologically advanced species lived on this planet millions of years ago? The unsettling answer is that we might not know at all. The Earth is an immensely active planet. Plate tectonics constantly recycle the crust, while erosion and sedimentation relentlessly bury the past. Over a time span of just a few million years, nearly every physical structure we build would be ground to dust. Our greatest cities, our highways, our monuments, all of it would be pulverized and layered into the geological record as a thin, strange line of sediment. The fossil record itself is incredibly sparse, preserving only a tiny fraction of all life that has ever existed. An entire species, even one that built a global civilization, could have its physical existence completely erased by these natural planetary processes. So what traces might remain? The most likely evidence would not be a buried statue or a rusted machine. It would be chemical, a sudden, massive spike in atmospheric carbon, a global layer of plastic particulates, or a strange distribution of rare earth elements and synthetic molecules frozen in rock layers. These would be the ghostly fingerprints of an industrial age that came and went. Our own civilization is currently creating such a layer right now, a chemical signature that will be detectable for eons. The Silurian hypothesis does not claim that such a civilization actually existed. Instead, it forces us to confront the fragility of our own legacy and the sheer depth of deep time. It expands the mystery of lost continents from mere geography to an entire lost history of life itself. If the land can be swallowed, how much more easily could the memory of its inhabitants be wiped away? This idea shatters the assumption that intelligence is a unique, recent event on our planet. It suggests that the rise and fall of advanced species could be a natural, repeating cycle in Earth's long history, with each cycle separated by tens of millions of years. The continents those beings walked upon may have looked entirely different, their very names and maps now ground into the mantle, forever beyond our reach. High on a windswept hill in Turkey, a discovery is quietly unraveling the timeline of human civilization. This is Göbekli Tepe, a sprawling complex of stone circles erected over 11,000 years ago. Its pillars are enormous, some weighing more than 10 tons, intricately carved with a menagerie of elaborate animals. The sheer scale and precision of the work is breathtaking. But the true shock is not just its age, but who built it. According to mainstream history, this site was constructed by hunter-gatherers, nomadic peoples who should have been focused solely on survival. They had not yet developed agriculture, they had no permanent cities, and metal tools were millennia away. So how did they achieve this architectural marvel? The stones were quarried from local bedrock, shaped and moved, likely with simple stone tools and immense human effort. The organization required is staggering, suggesting a level of social complexity and shared purpose that historians never attributed to people of that era. It forces a profound question: who taught them? The sophistication of the carvings, the clear understanding of geometry and structural engineering, all point to a knowledge base that seems to appear fully formed. This has led some researchers to a radical theory. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe is not the beginning of something, but the echo of an ending. Could its builders have been the students of a much older, more advanced culture, one that was already in decline? A precursor civilization, perhaps one displaced by the rising seas at the end of the Ice Age, might have seeded this knowledge. The survivors, scattered and struggling, could have carried with them the fragments of a lost world's technology and beliefs, inspiring the last great project of a dying age. Göbekli Tepe stands as a powerful terrestrial anchor, a monument on dry land that points directly to a mystery in the deep. It suggests that the true cradle of civilization may not be in the fertile river valleys we know, but on landscapes that are now underwater, their stories silent beneath the waves. If this single site can force us to rewrite our past, what other truths are still buried, waiting for the right shovel to strike stone? In 1882, a book appeared that would permanently alter the search for lost worlds. Ignatius Donnelly, an American congressman and amateur scholar, published Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, a work of staggering ambition. He proposed a radical idea that Plato's story was not a myth, but a literal historical account. More than that, he argued Atlantis was the single source from which all known ancient civilizations emerged. Donnelly meticulously assembled his case, drawing from a dizzying array of fields long before such interdisciplinary study was common. He pointed to the startling similarities in flood myths from cultures separated by oceans, suggesting they were not independent creations, but fragmented memories of the same catastrophic event that sank their motherland. He compared architectural wonders like the pyramid structures built in Egypt and Central America, seeing them not as coincidental parallels, but as the exported architectural blueprints of a common, advanced ancestor. He even traced linguistic roots, arguing that ancient languages on both sides of the Atlantic shared common words and phonetic building blocks, all pointing back to a lost homeland. His theory extended to agriculture and technology, proposing that skills like metallurgy and the cultivation of certain crops originated in Atlantis before being carried by fleeing survivors to the far corners of the globe. By modern scientific standards, his methods were deeply flawed, often cherry-picking evidence to fit a predetermined narrative and lacking the rigorous peer review we expect today. Yet his impact was undeniable. Donnelly demonstrated the profound power of comparative mythology, showing that by lining up the stories of disparate cultures, one could glimpse the shadow of a shared, forgotten past. He transformed Atlantis from a philosophical allegory into a historical hypothesis, sparking a public fascination that burns as brightly now as it did over a century ago. His work, for all its imperfections, laid the very foundation for the modern quest to map the lost continents, forcing us to ask whether the connections between our ancient world are far deeper and more mysterious than we ever supposed. The dramatic notion of a continent vanishing overnight captures the imagination, but the geological reality is far more gradual and powerful. The true story of lost lands is written in the slow, relentless dance of the Earth's tectonic plates. Our planet's crust is not a single, solid shell, but a broken puzzle of massive plates that constantly shift, collide, and pull apart. This movement is key to understanding how land can disappear beneath the waves. The crust itself comes in two distinct types. Continental crust is thick, buoyant, and old, forming the familiar landmasses we live on. Oceanic crust, by contrast, is thinner, denser, and constantly being recycled. When these two types of crust interact, the results can reshape the world map over millions of years. One crucial process is crustal subsidence. This is the slow, inexorable sinking of a landmass. It can happen for several reasons. The immense weight of a massive volcanic plateau, like the one forming the island of Hawaii, can actually cause the entire oceanic plate beneath it to bend and sag over time. In other cases, the stretching and thinning of a continental plate, such as in the Great Rift Valley of Africa, can cause a vast region to gradually lower, a process that could one day create a new ocean. This is not a sudden collapse, but a creeping descent measured in millimeters per year, a pace almost imperceptible across a human lifetime but transformative over geological epochs. This slow subsidence is very different from the rapid coastal flooding caused by meltwater pulses at the end of the Ice Age. That was the ocean rising to claim low-lying land. Crustal subsidence is the land itself retreating downward to meet the sea. Yet, this slow process can be punctuated by moments of immense drama. A landmass already stressed by subsidence could be catastrophically finished off by a massive seismic event. A single, violent earthquake or a series of them could trigger large-scale slumping, where sections of coastal land fracture and slide into the deep. When combined with a powerful tsunami generated by the same tectonic shift, the effect on a coastal civilization would be apocalyptic. From their perspective, it would indeed seem as if their world was swallowed by the sea in a single, terrible day. This scientific understanding reframes our search. We are not looking for a continent that dropped like a stone, but for the ghostly outlines of lands that underwent a long, slow descent, their final chapters written in sudden, violent geological spasms. The myths of a world lost in a day and a night may not be about the entire process, but about its devastating final act. The most recent addition to our world map is a continent almost no one has ever seen. In 2017, geologists made a stunning announcement confirming the existence of a new continent called Zealandia. This is not a speculative land from ancient myth, but a solid piece of continental crust larger than India, sitting right there in the southwestern Pacific. Its story is one of slow-motion disappearance. Around 80 million years ago, this land began to stretch and thin, a process that caused it to gradually sink. Then, as the Tasman seafloor spread apart, Zealandia was pulled further downward, until 94% of its entire mass vanished below the waves. Today, only its highest mountain peaks remain above water, the islands we know as New Zealand and New Caledonia. This is the crucial point. Zealandia is not a collection of islands sitting on oceanic crust. It is a single, coherent continental fragment, a piece of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana that broke away and drowned. Its recognition was based on 4 clear geological criteria: a crust that is elevated above the surrounding ocean floor, a distinctive geology that includes igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks, a crust that is thicker and less dense than ocean basin crust, and well-defined limits around a large enough area to be considered a continent rather than a microcontinent. This discovery fundamentally changes the game. It proves scientifically that vast continental lands can, and do, exist almost entirely beneath the ocean. Zealandia provides a powerful, modern analog for how other lost continents might have fragmented and submerged. It offers a tangible geological model for the slow sinking of a landmass, a process that could have taken millions of years, leaving only scattered islands as haunting reminders of a much larger world. This is not just a story about the past, it is a living laboratory demonstrating the dynamic nature of our planet, showing us that the maps we take for granted are merely a snapshot in deep time. If a continent the size of Zealandia could be lost to science until the 21st century, what other geographical truths are we still missing, hidden in plain sight beneath the familiar blue of our oceans? Scattered across the globe, separated by thousands of miles and seemingly impenetrable cultural barriers, are monuments that share a secret language written in stone. In the high Andes of Peru, the wall of Sacsayhuaman stands as a breathtaking puzzle. Its stones are colossal, some weighing over 100 tons, and they are fitted together with a jigsaw-like precision that defies logic. The curves and angles are so exact, the seams between the blocks so impossibly tight, that not even a razor blade can slide between them. This is not simple stacking, it is a form of megalithic art that seems to soften solid rock. On the other side of the world, in the sands of Egypt, lies the Osirian, a mysterious subterranean structure attributed to the pharaoh Seti I. Its core is built with cyclopean blocks of red granite, each one perfectly squared and locked together with the same masterful, seamless joinery. The scale and style feel eerily out of place, more primordial and robust than the elegant temples built above it. Then there is the foundation platform of Baalbek in Lebanon, home to the famous Roman temples. But beneath those later constructions lies a far more ancient mystery, the Trilithon. This is a terrace made of 3 limestone blocks, each one estimated to weigh an astonishing 800 tons. A 4th stone, still partially lodged in a nearby quarry, weighs over 1,000 tons. The question is not just how they were moved, but why. Why would any culture choose to build with such incomprehensibly massive materials when smaller stones would suffice? The shared thread connecting these sites is a technology that appears in the archaeological record fully formed, without any evidence of a slow, evolutionary development. There are no crude prototypes showing a learning process. At each location, the builders demonstrated a complete mastery over stone, as if they had inherited a set of perfect instructions from a master architect. They understood how to cut granite with surgical precision, how to move weights that would challenge modern cranes, and how to assemble walls that could withstand millennia of earthquakes. This pattern of impossible engineering forces a profound question. Could these similarities be more than just parallel invention? Is it possible that these distant cultures were not working in isolation, but were all applying fragments of a shared, advanced knowledge base, a common curriculum in megalithic construction? This idea suggests the shadow of a central source, a guiding civilization whose influence and technical wisdom were carried across the oceans, leaving behind these silent, stone textbooks as the only evidence of their existence. A geological marvel in the heart of the Sahara Desert offers a radical new answer to the oldest mystery. The Richat structure, a colossal bullseye etched into the Mauritanian landscape, is so vast its concentric rings are only fully visible from orbit. For decades, it was considered a fascinating natural phenomenon, the eroded remnant of a volcanic dome. But a growing number of researchers now propose a breathtaking alternative, that this formation is the true location of Atlantis. When you place Plato's description alongside satellite imagery, the parallels are startling. He wrote of a central island citadel surrounded by alternating rings of land and water. The Richat's formation is a near-perfect match, a series of circular ridges and valleys that could have once held waterways. The scale is also remarkably close, with Plato's dimensions for the central city aligning almost exactly with the Richat's inner circle. This theory also re-examines the all-important location beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Traditionally, these pillars are identified as the Strait of Gibraltar, placing Atlantis firmly in the Atlantic Ocean. But some interpretations suggest the pillars could have referred to a different geographical gateway in the ancient world. If so, a location in northwest Africa, just beyond a known trading route, could fit this revised geographical clue. The surrounding area adds further intrigue. Satellite surveys have revealed the ghostly outlines of ancient riverbeds, proving that this now arid region was once a lush, green land crisscrossed with water, a perfect environment for a thriving civilization. Archaeological sites nearby have yielded tools and artifacts dating back thousands of years, indicating sustained human activity. This is not about finding a sunken city, but a city that was lost to a different kind of cataclysm. Proponents suggest that instead of being swallowed by the sea, this Atlantis was buried by time and a changing climate, as the Sahara transformed from a savanna into a desert. The cataclysmic event described by Plato could have been a massive dust storm or a dramatic shift in weather patterns that rendered the land uninhabitable, a destruction by sand and fire instead of water. This theory demonstrates a powerful shift in the search for lost worlds. It moves us from scouring the ocean floor to reinterpreting the land we can already see, using modern tools to read ancient texts with fresh eyes. It asks us to consider that the most famous lost city of all might not be under the waves at all, but hiding in plain sight, patiently waiting for us to recognize its form from a new perspective. Far to the north, locked in the permafrost of Siberia and Alaska, lies a mystery that defies all gradual explanations. The remains of woolly mammoths and other Ice Age giants are not just buried, they are preserved in a state of instant suspension. Some have been found standing upright, their last meal still undigested in their stomachs. This final meal tells a startling story, composed not of the tough, sparse tundra grasses one would expect in an icy world, but of delicate buttercups, wild beans, and other temperate plants that could not survive a deep freeze. These animals did not starve slowly, they were flash frozen so rapidly that their food never had time to decay. This is not the slow march of an ice age, this is the signature of a cataclysm, a geological event that changed the world's climate in a matter of hours, not millennia. How could such a thing happen? One compelling theory points to the skies. A large comet or asteroid impact striking the Earth's ice sheets would have unleashed an unimaginable amount of energy. The immediate heat would have vaporized vast tracts of ice instantly, while the subsequent shock waves could have triggered earthquakes and volcanic eruptions across the globe. The debris thrown into the atmosphere would have created a fiery rain, followed by a global winter. But for the mammoths on the ground, the most immediate danger might have been a different kind of flood, a superheated blast of steam and mud roaring across the continents, scouring the landscape and flash freezing everything in its path as it expanded and cooled. This scenario provides a terrifyingly plausible mechanism for the global flood myths we explored earlier. A comet impact of that scale would have displaced colossal volumes of water, sending tsunamis hundreds of feet high racing across the world's oceans. These walls of water would have obliterated any coastal civilization, swallowing islands and low-lying continental shelves whole. The very lands that served as bridges between ancient peoples would have been inundated in a single, violent event, their inhabitants scattered or lost. This idea connects the frozen Arctic to the sunken ruins in the tropics, weaving them together into a single global catastrophe. The mammoths, with their stomachs full of summer flowers, become the silent witnesses to a day of reckoning that reshaped the planet, a day that may have wiped the slate clean for humanity and sent us back to a figurative Stone Age, our collective memory filled only with the echoing trauma of a world consumed by water. While geologists mapped sunken continents and archaeologists debated submerged stones, a different kind of searcher was at work. From a modest house in Virginia, a man named Edgar Case would lie down, close his eyes, and speak of Atlantis as if he were reading from a lost history book. Known as the Sleeping Prophet, Case entered a self-induced trance state, offering over 14,000 psychic readings on topics from health to history. His detailed accounts of the lost continent have become a cornerstone of its modern legend. He described a highly advanced civilization, one that harnessed a mysterious energy source he called the Firestone. This technology, he claimed, powered everything from transportation to a central energy crystal that provided light and energy for the entire society. Case went beyond technology, outlining a complex social structure that eventually split into two opposing factions: the children of the Law of One, who followed a spiritual path, and the sons of Belial, who were driven by selfishness and material power. Most strikingly, he asserted that Atlantis was destroyed not once but 3 times, with the final cataclysm occurring around 10,000 B.C.E. This layered destruction, from geological upheavals to the ultimate sinking, provided an explanation for why the story exists in fragments across different cultures and epochs. Case also made a prediction that continues to fuel expeditions to this day. He foretold the discovery of a hall of records, a hidden repository of Atlantean knowledge, which he said would be found somewhere beneath the sands near the Great Sphinx of Giza. This vault, he claimed, would contain the entire history of the lost continent on crystalline tablets, waiting to be rediscovered. While mainstream science dismisses Case's visions as pure fantasy, his influence on the popular imagination is undeniable. His readings gave Atlantis a texture and a timeline that mere legend lacked, transforming it from a philosophical idea into a seemingly tangible, technologically sophisticated society with a dramatic and morally charged history. His work represents a powerful undercurrent in the search for lost worlds, one driven not by sonar or shovel, but by the belief that some truths are accessible only through the intuitive mind. This esoteric tradition asks us to consider whether the maps to our past might be found not only on the ocean floor, but also within the uncharted territories of human consciousness. The silent ruins on the ocean floor cannot speak for themselves, so we have built machines to listen for them. This is the world of underwater archaeology, a field that has evolved from treasure hunting into a precise science. The search begins not with divers but with sound. Ships tow sophisticated sonar systems that paint a picture of the seabed without ever touching it. Side-scan sonar works like an acoustic flashlight, sending out sound waves that bounce off the seafloor and return to create a detailed, almost photographic image of the bottom. It can reveal the unnatural straight lines of a wall or the distinct mound of a collapsed structure hidden under centuries of silt. For an even broader view, scientists use multi-beam bathymetry. This technology fans out a wide swath of sound beams to map vast areas of the ocean floor in stunning three-dimensional detail, revealing the ghostly topography of submerged river valleys and ancient coastlines that were once dry land. These tools act as our underwater eyes, scanning the deep for any anomaly that whispers of human hands, but a shadow on a sonar screen is only a clue, not confirmation. To truly understand what lies below, we must send down our robotic ambassadors. Remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, are uncrewed submersibles connected to a mothership by a long, thick cable that supplies power and transmits data. These machines are equipped with high-definition cameras, powerful lights, and manipulator arms that can gently brush away sediment or recover an artifact with the care of a surgeon. They can descend to crushing depths where no human diver could survive, patiently investigating a site for hours or days on end, beaming a live video feed back to eager researchers on the surface. Yet the work itself is fraught with immense challenges. The deep ocean is a hostile environment. The pressure is unimaginable, increasing by 1 atmosphere for every 10 meters of depth, enough to crush a submarine hull. Visibility can drop to 0 in an instant with one kick of a fin, and delicate organic materials like wood or cloth are often consumed by marine organisms, leaving only stone and pottery behind. The very process of excavation is a delicate ballet, where a single wrong move can destroy a context that has been preserved for millennia. Every artifact recovered, every wall mapped, is a small victory against the relentless power of the sea. This meticulous, technologically aided process is what separates modern research from the speculation of the past. It is the methodical gathering of evidence, piece by fragile piece, that is slowly transforming our search for lost continents from a quest driven by legend into a rigorous discipline capable of rewriting human history. While Plato's story echoed across the Mediterranean, a real civilization on the southern coast of Spain perfectly mirrored its legendary details. This was Tartessos, a wealthy and sophisticated culture that thrived for centuries before mysteriously disappearing from all historical records around 500 BC. Ancient Greek writers described it as a land of immense riches, a hub for trade in precious metals like silver and tin. Its capital city was said to be a marvel, situated on an island at the mouth of a great river, protected by complex waterways and towering walls. The parallels to Plato's account are almost too striking to ignore. Tartessos was located exactly where the philosopher placed his lost empire, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar. Its sudden and complete erasure from history provides a plausible historical event that could have been exaggerated and mythologized over time, transforming a powerful, real kingdom into the epic, continent-sized Atlantis. Could a localized disaster, such as a devastating earthquake followed by a tsunami that flooded its river delta capital, have been the kernel of truth that grew into a tale of a world sinking beneath the waves? Archaeological excavations in the Andalusia region are slowly piecing together the puzzle of this lost society. Researchers have uncovered evidence of a unique language and script, advanced metalworking, and extensive trade networks that reached across the ancient world. The discovery of the Cancho Rono site, a large, complex sanctuary with clear Tartessian artifacts, reveals a culture with significant ritual and architectural knowledge. Yet, despite these finds, the heart of Tartessos, its legendary capital city, has never been definitively located. This absence is itself a powerful clue, suggesting its central hub may lie buried under centuries of silt at the shifting mouth of the Guadalquivir River, or perhaps was completely washed away by the very cataclysm that ended it. This theory offers a compelling middle ground in the search for lost worlds. Tartessos was not a continent, but a remarkably advanced coastal civilization that met a sudden, catastrophic end. Its story demonstrates how a real, prosperous society could vanish so completely that its memory, distorted by time and retelling, eventually re-emerged as the greatest legend of all. The ghost of Tartessos invites us to consider that the seeds of myth are often found not in fantasy, but in the fragmented, sunken history of a very real human past. A world map from 1531 holds a secret that should not exist. Created by the French cartographer Orontius Phineus, this elaborate chart depicts the southernmost continent with a stunning and impossible accuracy. The coastline is shown as a landmass free of ice, with deep inlets, flowing rivers, and recognizable geographical features that correspond to the actual shape of Antarctica, buried under miles of glacial cover. The problem is elemental. Antarctica has been encased in a thick ice sheet for millions of years. Its true, ice-free topography was completely unknown to modern science until the 20th century, when sophisticated seismic surveys and satellite radar finally pierced the frozen veil to map the bedrock below. So how did a mapmaker from the 16th century, working with the limited knowledge of his era, manage to depict a continent that would not be officially discovered for another 300 years? The most compelling explanation is also the most revolutionary. The Orontius Phineus map may not be an original work, but a copy of a copy, a relic from a much older source. Proponents of this theory suggest it preserves the geographical knowledge of an advanced prehistoric seafaring culture, a civilization that explored the globe at a time when Antarctica's coasts were partially or fully exposed. This would place the origin of this knowledge deep in the past, to an epoch over 6,000 years ago, when some scientific models suggest the last periods of significant Antarctic deglaciation occurred. This single piece of parchment becomes a ghost image from a lost atlas, a surviving fragment of a global survey conducted by a people whose name and history have been completely erased. The map implies that this forgotten culture not only existed but possessed navigational skills and cartographic techniques sophisticated enough to accurately project the spherical Earth onto a flat surface, understanding longitude and latitude long before we believed such knowledge was possible. It suggests their explorers charted the entire world, including lands that would later become inaccessible. Their findings passed down through generations and copied by unsuspecting medieval scholars who included the strange southern land simply because it was there on their ancient source documents. This cartographic anomaly forces a profound reassessment of our past. If one such map exists, how many others have been lost? What other accurate geographical data might be hidden in plain sight within other ancient charts, dismissed as fantasy or decorative flourish? The Orontius Phineus map stands as a quiet, persistent challenge to the conventional timeline of human exploration, a piece of the puzzle that suggests the true age of discovery may have occurred not centuries ago, but millennia before recorded history began. The stone monuments and ocean currents tell one story, but the deepest evidence is written inside us, in the very blueprint of life. Genetics now allows us to read this ancient map, tracing the journeys of our ancestors through the subtle markers carried in mitochondrial DNA, passed down through mothers, and the Y chromosomes passed from father to son. These biological roadmaps largely confirm the great human migration out of Africa, spreading across the continents over tens of thousands of years. Yet, within this grand narrative, scientists have found strange detours, genetic whispers that hint at voyages far more daring than we once believed possible. On the remote Easter Island, known to its people as Rapa Nui, genetic studies of the modern population have revealed a small but significant signature of Native American ancestry. The analysis suggests this genetic exchange occurred not in recent centuries, but long before European ships ever reached those shores, sometime between the 1300s and 1500s. This finding is a biological bombshell. It implies that someone from the Americas, perhaps a single boatload of people, made the immense journey across the eastern Pacific to this tiny, isolated island, or that the Polynesians themselves reached South America and returned with new companions. This human evidence perfectly complements the botanical puzzle of the sweet potato. This sturdy root vegetable, undeniably domesticated in the Andes Mountains of South America, was found growing across the Pacific Islands from Hawaii to New Zealand when the first European explorers arrived. The Polynesians had their own name for it, a word startlingly similar to its Quechua name in the Andes. How could this be unless people carried it across the ocean? The most logical explanation is contact, a meeting of cultures separated by a vast expanse of sea. These genetic and botanical clues suggest that the lost continental shelves and land bridges we have explored were not just theoretical pathways. They may have served as crucial waypoints in a much larger network of exploration. The submerged plateau of Zealandia, for instance, could have provided a chain of islands far more extensive than today's map shows, creating a much easier passage for ancient mariners moving between the Pacific's scattered points. This biological evidence transforms speculation into a tangible roadmap of ancient movement. It shows us that the world's oceans were not empty voids, but were crossed by intrepid people who left their mark not only in stone and story, but in the very genes of their descendants and the crops they cultivated. Their journeys suggest a planet far more connected in the deep past, with stories of travel and exchange that we are only just beginning to decode. A coiled form slithers through the foundational myths of nearly every ancient culture on Earth. From the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl, who brought knowledge to the peoples of Mesoamerica, to the great dragon kings of Chinese legend who controlled the waters, this symbol is universal. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh features a serpent that steals the plant of immortality, while in ancient Egypt, the giant snake Apep was the eternal enemy of the sun god, representing chaos and darkness. Even across the ocean, in the Aboriginal Dreamtime of Australia, the rainbow serpent is a central creator being, shaping the land and its rivers. The consistency is breathtaking, a shared archetype emerging independently across continents and oceans. But what if this was more than a psychological coincidence? What if it was a shared memory, etched into the human story by a real, terrifying event witnessed by our ancestors? One compelling theory links this universal serpent to the skies. Imagine a comet breaking apart as it entered the ancient atmosphere. Its long, glowing tail, fragmented into a series of fiery balls, would have streaked across the heavens, appearing not as a single point of light, but as a twisting, malevolent dragon in the night. This celestial serpent, associated with the global cataclysms that followed, could have become the symbolic root for all these myths. The great floods that submerged the continental shelves and the climate chaos that flash-frozen the mammoths would have been seen as the direct result of this sky serpent's wrath. The symbol then splits into two powerful interpretations, reflecting humanity's attempt to make sense of the disaster. In some cultures, the serpent becomes a benevolent bringer of wisdom and renewal, like Quetzalcoatl, perhaps representing the hard-won knowledge that helped survivors rebuild in a broken world. In others, it remains a pure force of chaos and destruction, like Apep, the embodiment of the uncontrollable natural forces that had shattered their lives. This shared motif, woven into the very fabric of our oldest stories, may be the most enduring clue of all. It suggests that the bridges between ancient cultures were not only physical, traversing lost lands, but also mythological, forged in the collective trauma of a global event witnessed from every corner of the world. The serpent is the ghost in the global machine, a silent witness to the day the maps were rewritten. These stories passed down by elders were never just simple tales. For generations, academic historians largely dismissed oral traditions as unreliable folklore, too distorted by time to hold any factual weight. Yet a dramatic shift is now underway, as modern science is confirming that these narratives can preserve precise geological memories for staggering lengths of time. Take the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, whose stories describe ancient coastlines that vanished when the seas rose at the end of the last ice age. Their detailed accounts of islands that are now underwater and of bays that were once dry land correspond with maps of the continental shelf from over 10,000 years ago. How could a people accurately describe a landscape they have never physically seen unless the memory of it was faithfully transmitted across hundreds of generations? On the other side of the world, the Klamath tribe of North America have a powerful legend about the great battle between the sky chief Skell and the god of the underworld, Lau. Their story tells of a mountain that trembled and exploded with fire, collapsing in on itself to form a vast, deep caldera. This is a perfect description of the volcanic eruption of Mount Mazama, an event that geologists have dated to 7,700 years ago, which created the crater we now call Crater Lake. The Klamath people not only preserved the memory of the cataclysm itself, but also the knowledge to avoid the area for generations due to the dangerous spirits they believed remained. This is not vague mythology, it is a specific cautionary tale rooted in a real and datable event. These examples force us to reconsider every flood myth, every story of land swallowed by the sea. If oral histories can reliably preserve the details of volcanic eruptions and changing coastlines for millennia, then why not the memory of a great inundation? The tales of Atlantis and Mu and the global deluge begin to look less like fiction and more like the fragmented, poetic echoes of a shared human experience, a trauma so profound that the only way to carry it forward was to weave it into the very fabric of culture. The true map of our past may not be carved in stone, but whispered on the breath of storytellers, patiently waiting for us to learn how to listen. The quest for lost worlds has drawn some of the most brilliant and adventurous minds of our time into the crushing darkness of the deep. Film director James Cameron, known for creating vast cinematic worlds, has a profound passion for exploring the real one. He has personally designed and piloted submersibles to the very bottom of the Mariana Trench, the deepest point on the planet. For Cameron, the ocean is the ultimate frontier, a place where science and mystery collide. His high-profile expeditions do more than satisfy personal curiosity. They bring cutting-edge technology and massive public attention to the field, proving that the search for our past is as thrilling as any science fiction. Equally influential is Dr. Robert Ballard, the oceanographer who famously located the wreck of the RMS Titanic, but his work extends far beyond famous shipwrecks. Ballard has applied his expertise to the search for evidence supporting ancient flood stories, leading a major expedition in the Black Sea. His team investigated the theory that a catastrophic deluge around 7,600 years ago, when rising Mediterranean waters burst through the Bosporus Strait, could have submerged a vast coastal plain. This event would have been so sudden and devastating, it could have inspired the various flood myths that persist across cultures. Ballard's team discovered an ancient shoreline far below the current surface, along with well-preserved artifacts, providing tangible clues that such a cataclysm was not just possible but probable. These modern explorers act as vital bridges, connecting the world of academic research with the public's imagination. Their efforts secure the funding for multi-million-dollar sonar systems and deep-diving robots, pushing the technological boundaries of what is possible on the seafloor. They transform abstract theories into gripping, real-world quests that capture global headlines. When a figure like Ballard turns his tools from a luxury liner to a prehistoric coastline, or when Cameron uses his resources to probe the abyss, it sends a powerful message. The greatest adventure on Earth may not be in outer space, but in the hidden history lying just beneath the waves, waiting for the right combination of courage, technology, and vision to bring its secrets to light. So we are left with a puzzle, its pieces scattered across different fields of study. Geology confirms the land was there, vast continental shelves now sleeping on the ocean floor. Archaeology shows us structures like Göbekli Tepe, which appear with a sophistication that seems to arrive out of nowhere. Genetics traces human movement across oceans long before we thought it possible, while botany shows us the sweet potato bridging continents. And mythology provides the chorus, a global echo of flood and loss. Alone, each of these threads is a fascinating anomaly. Woven together, they form the outline of a profound new story. The grand, technologically advanced Atlantis of legend may be a myth, but its core premise seems to hold a deep truth. The world our ancestors inhabited 12,000 years ago was dramatically different from our own, a planet of lower seas and greater connections. When the ice melted, it was not a gentle thaw but a series of violent pulses that drowned entire landscapes. The peoples living on those coastal plains, the Sunderlands and the Doggerlands, were not primitive. They were cultures with their own knowledge, their own maritime traditions, and their own memories. As the waters rose, they were forced to flee, carrying with them in their boats the seeds of their world. They brought the knowledge of megalithic construction, which would later blossom in places like Peru and Egypt. They carried the stories of the Great Flood and the lost homeland, which would be retold for generations around new campfires. They transported the cuttings of vital crops, and sometimes they themselves joined new communities, leaving a faint genetic signature in far-off populations. These were the survivors, the scattered children of a drowned world. Their legacy is not a single sunken city of gold, but the very foundations of the ancient civilizations that emerged seemingly from nowhere in river valleys and on fertile plains. They were the catalysts, the teachers, the refugees who brought with them the broken pieces of a forgotten age. This narrative does not require a lost super-civilization, but rather a lost chapter of human ingenuity and resilience. It suggests that the true cradle of civilization was not a single river, but a global coastline that no longer exists, a map we are only now beginning to redraw from the clues left behind in our genes, our stones, and our oldest stories. Our journey across this forgotten map reveals a world not of isolated tribes, but of a deeply interconnected ancient humanity. The stories they told and the knowledge they built were profoundly shaped by shared landscapes that now lie silent beneath the waves. We have seen the geological proof of sunken continents like Zealandia, and we have traced the cultural fingerprints left behind in shared flood myths and impossible megalithic designs. These are not separate clues, but different pieces of a single grand puzzle. They point to a dynamic past where vast land bridges and intrepid sea voyages allowed for the exchange of ideas across distances we once thought impossible. While many mysteries remain, this ongoing search reminds us that history is not a closed book, but an ocean still full of secrets. Every new sonar scan, every genetic discovery, adds another line to this ghostly atlas. We are only just beginning to understand the true scale of our collective past. What are your thoughts on these lost worlds? Share your perspective in the comments below and subscribe to continue exploring the greatest mysteries with us. The map is being redrawn, and the next chapter is waiting to be found.